Welcome back to Media Talks TV with your host Tony J. We about to drop another video, and of course, it's about Howard yet again. This is yet the second video that I've had to do. No, this is the third video that I've had to do about these bullshit ass HBCUs. Again, my previous video, I talked about why you shouldn't send your kid to Morgan State. I talked about my experience, gave you some examples of the bullshit that goes on at Morgan State. You can check that video out. That'll be in the description box. You can go back and check that out. I have had several videos where I've talked about the issues with HBCUs. Now, Howard yet again is back in the spotlight. And why you ask is because Howard University unenrolled 500 students due to a lack of fulfilling their payment deposit deadlines. This isn't new to Howard University, but it is also not the only HBCU that does this shit. Now I know. When I jump into this, people gonna jump in the comment by saying this happens at PWIs too. That this is happens across campus wide, but it don't. This shit don't happen at no predominantly white institution. You never heard of a white institution unenrolling 500 students for lack of payment. They put them on a payment plan, or they put them on a deferred loan status. I had a deferred payment plan at one point when I was at Morgan. But yet, when it comes to financial aid, there's a lot of bureaucratic shit that goes down. And I had to learn the hard way that when you're a freshman and you don't know the financial process or the financial aid process, you really could get yourself caught up in some bullshit that you didn't think was going to happen. Most of these institutions, when it comes right down to it, college is a business. And because it's a business, well, they have to make room for other students. But does that excuse the fact that you enrolled students, had the scholarships, had all the payments that they were coming in, and yet you purged them, as what they would call it, how students would call it, they purge you from the university. Howard has prided itself on being the top HBCU. When it comes to HBCUs, there's maybe about four or five, but I would say the cream of the crop of HBCUs when we talk about HBCUs would be, of course, Howard, Hampton, Morehouse, and Spelman. Those are the cream of the crop four. And maybe you could throw Xavier and Dillard in there. But the four mega institutions that could really stack up with the Ivy would probably be Howard, Hampton, Morehouse, Spelman. That's it. That's the way it is. And if you're lucky enough to get into any of those four schools, you've actually really made it, because all of the other HBCUs, they're not competitive, cream of the crop uh, institutions. Nobody knows them well enough to say, well, you went to this school and it was a top tier school. But being that Howard is a top tier school because it produced the first black female vice president and several other black politicians along with it, Howard has is like a tale of two universities. On one end, you have the legacy kids that come in. Those, and what I mean by legacy kids is that their parents went to Howard. They are a part of the big alumni, and then they don't get in with the SAT scores and whatnot. They get in based on legacy because their parents went there, their kids going there. So there's those type of students that are the ones that are getting protected. And then there's your ones that are basically the exceptional ones. What I mean by this, exceptional ones, they're the ones that take the SAT, have maybe 12, 1300 on the SAT and got a 3.8, 3.9 grade point average in high school, or do some sort of athletics. So they get in based off of maybe loans and scholarships. And then there are the ones where we call maybe the DC locals. And the thing about the DC locals, most DC locals don't go to Howard. They either go to Bowie, UDC, or Morgan State. So you got a lot of kids that look at Howard as their dream school. And this is where the problem persists with Howard. Howard is a brand, it's a symbol. And with all symbols, you get this whole thing about the MECCA, the hilltop, all these things, but are you getting a quality education? And most of the time, on the other side of that coin, just like with most HBCUs, it's just nothing but a bunch of partying and sororities and fraternities and all this other stupid shit that has nothing to do with the educational experience at these universities. So when I see a whole bunch of kids on TikTok crying because they got unenrolled from their dream school, that makes me beg the question, is Howard really worth the the sacrifices that these students are making? Because when you really truly look at it, underneath of all that hilltop and the Mecca bullshit, it's a lot of elitism, and people don't want to talk about this, but this bougie bull, this black bourgeoisie bullshit that goes on at a lot of these HBCUs, and not just Howard, it's Morgan as well. And I've experienced it firsthand. The black bourgeoisie, the black bougie bullshit, the boule divine nine bullshit, the legacy and the black excellence crap. I got tired of it. Hence why I left HBCU life altogether, because it wasn't nothing but a bunch of bullshit. And I'm like, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at these kids' TikToks, them crying over not getting into Howard and thinking about it. I'm like, Howard is a clown show. It's a clown show because for the simple fact that you got young black kids who never even dreamed of going to college. They get there and then they have to prove otherwise that they could fit a part of what Howard or Morgan represents. They had me going through that bullshit as well. It's like being on a hamster wheel. You know, you don't get this at PWIs, and I know people gonna have different perspectives about being at a PWI versus being at a HBCU. But really, the big problem with Howard is there's this cliquish mentality. And I know I'm not just speaking for Howard, but I'm also speaking for Morgan too, because I went to Morgan. And I knew kids that couldn't handle Howard end up going to Morgan and had to start their freshman year all over again because they lost their fucking credits. I know about those kids. It's all interconnected to the bullshit and the stuff that Howard University talks about. Oh, we're the Mecca. We're black excellence, and you got all these proper speaking Negroes who want to be at the upper echelons of society but can't get there because they don't have $500 to $600 suits. They don't have the connections or the network to get to that point. And it's something about this whole spiel of black excellence that I find just appalling because I was a part of that. And all this shit that they're pushing these kids into to believe it doesn't exist anymore. And our parents got an advantage that most students that today won't have in the corporate world. Remember, our parents got the advantage of affirmative action to get into these corporate environments. And we don't have that network anymore. So when these kids get into these colleges and I see these kids crying about not getting into Howard, and they feel like their future is over and their life is over and that they're not going to be able to get to the black excellence bullshit. I feel bad for them because see, they fed me that line of bullshit too, and it didn't work out for me either. In fact, none of it worked. And the thing about Howard is they keep pushing the legacy shit. They keep pushing this shit where, oh, Charles Drew. Oh, we had black scientists and black lawyers. We gave you Thurgood Marshall. We gave you all these people, black excellence and all this some shit like they pushing you. They pushing like the marvel of civil rights heroes that came out of Howard. Like they just push that shit onto you as a child, and then the parents that went to Howard University and then they pushed that legacy bullshit onto their kids, saying you could be like them, and you could pledge this fraternity, and you could pledge Kappa, or you could pledge all this Greek bullshit. I remember seeing it when I was younger, and people trying to get me to go to Morgan State. How people would come to my school and they were alphas and Q's and Kappa Alpha Psi and all this other shit. And they used to have pictures of children looking in the mirror, and in the mirror there would be a grown version of them, and they would be Phi Beta Kappas or fucking Alpha Phi Alpha and shit. Like they would push that propaganda onto you, and it's like people don't understand Howard is a propaganda machine where they feed you this talented 10th Negro shit onto a new generation of kids because they think that they're going to be the next scholars and the next engineers and next lawyers and stuff like that. But in reality, most of us can't even get into that world because of our environment. And a lot of these kids that's coming from places like California and Texas and Oakland, they're spending all this money just for what? Just so they can have the Howard brand, just so they could say they went to Howard. And then when they get in their freshman year, they can't handle the rigor. So then they end up transferring. Because there's a lot of stories about that. I knew Howard transfers that went to Morgan because they couldn't handle Howard. Because Howard was a party school. All they do is fucking party. The yard was nothing more than a fucking fashion show. And why would I want to go? Why would I want to put myself through that? And I would ask you, why would you want to put your children through that shit? Because you went through it? Whole generation of students that are battling an economic crisis and crying on TikTok about how Howard unenrolled them because, oh, they can't carry them anymore. And I ask myself all the time, I'm like, why does Howard keep doing this? And then when they get in there, the dorms are dilapidated. We had this issue maybe in 2018, 2019. They still have the same fucking issues. Dorm rooms with mold in it, dorm rooms flooding with piss, dorm rooms just catching on fire. And then what they do, and this is the fucked up thing about the institution, they try to blame the students. It's a never ending cauldron of bullshit with Howard University and with schools like Howard, Morgan, and Bowie, and FAMU, and every single fucking HBCU around the United States all got issues. But then the thing that they do, and this has always been a thing with Morgan and Howard, they over enroll, they overly recruit, and then they turn around and run out of fucking housing. You got kids from all over, from California, from New York to Chicago, Atlanta, all want to go to these schools. Then when they get enrolled, then they got housing issues. They got to be housed in hotels because they ran out of housing on campus. Then there's the shit with financial aid. And here's the biggest piece about the financial aid issue with HBCUs. When I was a student at Morgan, and I don't know if I told this again, I had issues with the bursar's office. I had to know my freshman year. I didn't know the difference between financial aid and the bursar's office. There was all this bureaucracy. Then when I accepted my aid, they said I still have a balance of $7,000 that's recurring on my account. And every time the semester rolled over, that fucking balance would roll over with me. And then the next semester, and then the next semester. And I'm like, how do I keep having this $7,000 balance and you don't clear it? Come to find out, their IT, information, IT technology, computer systems were slow as fuck. You got HBCUs who don't have proper IT infrastructure. I remember when I was at Morgan State, In 2009, 2008, Morgan did not have Wi-Fi. I had to go to the library with a yellow Ethernet cord just to do my homework. There was no Wi-Fi on campus. There was no Wi-Fi in O'Connell. So I had to walk all the way across the bridge to go to the library just to get my Wi-Fi so that I could do my homework and so that I could submit my quizzes online because I had Blackboard at the time. I had to go through that from 2009, well, 2008 to 2011, 3.5 years. Morgan did not have a system. Sometimes their systems would go down when we were registered for classes. Sometimes their systems would go down during the ad drop. And I had to wait maybe 2 hours for Websis to come back up. A lot of these HBCUs, if you really look at it deep down, most of them don't even have upgraded technology because they can't afford it. But how does all these schools not have upgraded technology? And then they turn around and they say, well, they didn't get your aid. They didn't get your financial aid package, didn't come through. Sometimes these systems would shut down and slow down, and it would take almost a day and a half to get them back up. I mean, their IT department was slow as fuck because competent, they didn't have competent people running the IT labs. And that to me was problematic. Then there was the issue with financial aid dropping my schedule. So then when they received the package, financial aid package, they still dropped my schedule because they said that the aid didn't come in. And I'm like, what you mean the aid didn't come in? It would take them 3 to 4 days to process the aid. And in the middle of that, they would drop the schedule. I've had issues. We used to call them Montebello moments. And a Montebello moment is if you're in the middle of class and they say, well, you're not registered for my class or you haven't paid for this particular class, so you have to leave the class in order to fix the balance on your schedule. And if the balance didn't go through, you had to drop the class altogether, drop that particular class. And I've had shit happen like that, and everybody says that's just a part of the college experience. Nobody should have to be disrupted from their college experience to go deal with a bill at the financial aid office or the bursar's office. When I transferred to a predominantly white institution, I didn't have this fucking problem because financial aid in the bursar's office communicated with me directly. I could call them up on the phone. I can get this white lady, and then this white lady would transfer me over to financial aid or records of registration. They had a professional environment. When you go to a black school and you try to call financial aid, most of the time it's always some fat black woman with an attitude. Or they say, well, just email the office, and then they send you on a wild fucking goose chase at the last minute. And this is what's problem the problem with HBCUs is and nobody wants to fucking talk about it, is the lack of professionalism in these offices, because like I said, like one of the biggest problems is these legacy admits. A lot of times what HBCUs do is they use nepotism to hire anybody. They put anybody on. Yet they don't have the training, yet they don't have the fucking professionalism. And then they put them on, and then they fuck up everything. Things like financial aid in the bursar's office is mostly ran by a bunch of illegitimate people. Or you'll get somebody that doesn't know what they're doing just because their their mother or their father was a legacy admit, or a part of the alumni association. So then they easily got a job working at the university just like that. And that's what's so fucked up about places like Morgan, Howard, Hampton, Spelman, Morehouse, all these other institutions. Black nepotism. And nepotism is something that is been an issue at Howard and Morgan for a long time. Is that's why we have the unprofessional environment. And most black professional environments, most black and predominantly black environments are unprofessional because they don't have the the ability to interact with people that are different from them. So when you're around black folks all day in an office, it's the same thing when you're going to an HBCU. And I hate to say it, but most stereotypes are true about black folks. We can be some lazy ass motherfuckers and not get anything done. Sometimes when we run offices, we don't we don't literally have the professionalism to deal with students. And then you have the older generation, and this is another thing about HBCUs that's a big problem. You have a generational divide of older alumni versus younger students, and in these environments, they look at they kind of talk to students, older generation of staff and faculty talk to students like they're fucking children, because when you come from a predominantly black environment, people feel like they can talk to you any old kind of way. They don't talk to you like you're a professional. I had issues when I was at Morgan State where I had somebody that was 50 or 65 years old talking to me and speaking to me like I'm their fucking grandchild. And I'm like, I'm not your child. So you ain't got no business talking to me like that. Even though you work here, and I try to do the best to respect some of these old faculty members. We had Morgan had some of the oldest faculty members, and I had to address them a certain way, yeah, because they have titles, and but at the same time, the biggest problem is some of the older faculty member look at the younger generation like they just petulant children that don't know their way through life. Even though there's some out there that are very mature, but it's like dealing with older faculty member at HBCUs is like dealing with a fucking grandparent in a nursing home. Always grumpy, always got some foul shit to say about some young people, some young folks. And I had to deal with that when I was on campus, and it was crazy because it felt like you were leaving your environment and then going back into this parent child dynamic with black faculty, older black faculty member and students, and they usually address them like they're their fucking children. And that familiarity environment does not a lot breed a lot of professionalism. Because remember, when a lot of these HBCUs talk about professionalism and dressing for success and all this other shit, respectability, politics and shit, they forget that they forget to kind of treat us like adults and talk to us like adults. That's why you have the situation at Tuskegee with the whole bonnet, pajama, uh banning and dressing like you dressing to the nines and shit like you getting a job even though you doing 18 credits. And who the hell wakes up in a suit and tie to go to an 8 o'clock exam? I sure as hell didn't. But these people, they care about that because they're trying to live up to the expectations of white folks. And it's this insecurity with HBCUs where they're trying to enforce this Eurocentric view of the world on the black students because they know they're dead fucking last in everything. And it's like looking in the mirror and being insecure, knowing that you breed a culture of degenerate behavior because of what people see within us on the outside world. So you're fighting, it's like you're fighting an uphill battle even when you go through, even if you get admitted, you're fighting an uphill battle constantly to fit in with the culture of HBCUs, going to step shows, going to Divine Nine, Greek organization events, and then trying to prove yourself in the classroom for a bunch of people that really don't give a fuck about you at the end of the day. And I see all these kids online crying. I'm like, why cry about an institution that just proved to you they don't give a fuck about you as long as they get their money? You're buying a brand. You're buying a label. If the institution stopped having students, Howard would be in trouble if they couldn't keep enrollment up. And that's the problem. I'm like, if you disenroll me or you unenroll me, why the fuck would I want to re-enroll back into your institution? Because then if I go through and try to matriculate through your institution, you're just gonna try some other shit. It's so many people that have gone to HBCUs and feel like they've been on a hamster wheel, ran the race, jump hoops, and that's what Morgan made me feel like as a student. And I could imagine the same thing for Howard students. They have to run on this treadmill. They had to prove that they could be a part of the Divine Nine. They had to prove that they could be a part of the black excellence bullshit by being a scholar. And if they ain't doing that, and if they can't do any of those, then they don't fit with the Howard culture. And I'm like, what is the brand worth if you got to keep constantly fighting for your place in the brand? The people make the brand doesn't make the people. Remember that. So many of these kids feel like they're dejected that they lost their future. And they should feel like that cuz why would you want to go to a school that would do that to you? And this is the thing that I'm trying to cut down to the core of what I'm trying the message that I'm trying to deliver is why are we forcing our children to adhere to a brand? How it ain't that fucking special? Hell, most of these schools ain't that fucking special. But you have parents that keep levying these expectations on these poor 18, 19-year old students, 18, 19-year old young adults, making them feel less than, making them feel like they ain't nothing if they don't get admitted to Howard. That's how they made me feel, and that's why I'm doing this video, because a lot of times we don't critique HBCUs, and it seems like when we talk about things about HBCUs, they talk about it's you're bashing our institutions. You're talking bad about our institutions. I don't give a fuck about your institution. Everybody wants to protect the brand, but they don't want to protect the students. The students make that brand. Howard doesn't make them. I remember my freshman year when I went to Morgan, how I had to jump hoops, how they had me going to pre-college taking remedial fucking courses, how they put me on academic probation, even though I asked them to help me and tutor me for mathematics and they couldn't do it. I remember how that felt when the older adults who call themselves faculty members will sit up there and make you feel like you're less than and you don't fit in with the Morgan standard because you're not this type of student, or you're not you're not proving yourself. And they kept telling us, well, if you this is your last chance. If you fail these three courses, you won't get admitted into Morgan State. They told me this shit 3 months before my freshman year, made me feel like I wasn't good enough for the fucking institution. And I'm like, if I could succeed here, I could succeed anywhere. And then when I said I was leaving Morgan, then they made me feel like, oh, you need to support your HBCU. I don't give a fuck about HBCUs. HBCUs can kiss my ass. Y'all ain't special. All the stupid shit they do at HBCUs, fucking give you fried chicken and fucking macaroni and cheese and collard greens for fucking dinner. Like that's the only thing. I had better food over at Towson than I did over at Morgan. I had better faculty member over at Towson than I did at fucking Morgan. Wasn't no people coming on the outside. There wasn't no outsiders coming to the school when I was at Towson. But it was always ghetto ass motherfuckers coming to Morgan during homecoming trying to start some shit with the actual students. Homecoming come around, there always be fights on campus. Somebody gets stabbed, somebody gets shot at Marble Hall. It was always a shooting. There's always a fucking robbery. Somebody gets shot over at Northwood Shopping Center. Somebody gets shot somewhere. Somebody get robbed. There's always a robbery on the southern part of the campus. Same thing with Howard. I used to hear stories from former Howardites that they couldn't wear their Howard shirts on Georgia Avenue because they would get robbed on Georgia Avenue because it's in the middle of the hood. It's always all these HBCUs. They don't talk about the shit that happens to students off campus versus what happens to students on campus. They like to paint this boogeyman with PWIs. Oh, you know they're racist and you're never going to feel good in a predominantly white space. And I'm like, I felt better in a predominantly white space than I did in a predominantly black space, because then I didn't have to worry about getting robbed off campus. I didn't have to worry about drug dealers coming on campus. Didn't have to worry about fucking drug dealers and drug thug niggas in my dorm room. I had to worry about all that shit when I went to Morgan. thug niggas at Thurgood Marshall Complex, drug dealing ass niggas at Rawlins Hall. I had to worry about that shit. People smoking blunts and drinking behind hurt gymnasium. I saw that with my own two eyes, and I know ain't nobody gonna sit there and act like that shit exists at predominantly white institutions. It damn sure didn't exist at Towson because drinking was never allowed on campus. Y'all keep defending these HBCUs all you want, but there's always some bullshit with y'all. There's always some bullshit with HBCUs. Every time I look up, it's some bullshit. Either you fucking with my money. I done had $500 scholarships that didn't disperse to my account on time. Had to wait 3 months for a $500 scholarship that Morgan gave me to disperse to my account so that I can get my textbooks for class. Had to beg them. Sometimes I had to come out of my fucking pocket just to get my books. Every time you turn around, the professor expects you to buy the new edition of the book instead of a second edition. It was always that bullshit. Second edition of the book costs 150, $160 more. Use it for one semester, trade it in, and it go for less. Couldn't even get your fucking money back. It was a waste of like going to a HBCU is a waste of bandwidth and it's a waste of time. And if these students got unenrolled, guess what? Howard University did you a favor. Because if you were enrolled and they treated you like this now, imagine what they're going to do when you're in Howard or when you're in Morgan or Morehouse. Then you got to jump fucking hoops. Then you got to deal with the fucking politics. Then you got to deal with the older faculty condescending you like you're a fucking child, talking about it's your responsibility and you students, you just don't know how good you have it. You're just so unprofessional. You need to pull your pants up. All this shit with the older faculty members, treating younger adults like they fucking petulant children, talking to them like they children. I wasn't talked to like that at a predominantly white institution. I was treated like a fucking adult. And that's the problem. These kids, these young adults don't get treated like they're fucking adults. They get treated like they're children. That's why they do the shit that they do at HBCUs. It's always some stupid shit. People misappropriating funds, people steal older faculty members stealing out of the department, grifting, doing all types of foul shit. But nobody black wants to talk about that shit. Wants to talk about the corruptness that goes on at HBCUs. And then when you get a front seat to that, these parents don't tell their kids what to look out for when they go to an HBCU or when they go to college in general. Because students have rights. And one of the things that HBCUs do is they squelch student speech and they squelch freedom of expression. And they don't allow student and this is where I tell you there's a difference. There's a difference between going to a PWI and going to a HBCU. At a PWI, you could criticize the administration, you could criticize the university. You could have free expression of your opinion. If you don't like the dean, you could say, I don't like the dean. I don't like the department. I don't like the president of my university because they're doing this, this, and this. Students have right long as they don't disrupt the academic environment. I had that at Towson. When you're at Morgan and you want to criticize the administration, they start threatening you. They start putting up, try to squelch or crush articles that deal with the criticizing of an administration. And then on top of that, they have a PR department that tells their students don't speak to the press. They have things like that in place because the thing that they want to do is protect the institution at the behest of the student. And when you have schools like Howard University that participate in shit like this, Howard, Morgan, Bowie, Morehouse, Hampton, all these institutions, FAMU, they have PR departments that squelch, that that crush student expression. They have people there that put that squelch all the expression of the student voice. And most students don't have a voice on their college campus. I had situations like that when I was a student at Morgan. I had things that were shady in my department that I didn't like, but there was no one to complain to because the faculty members were complacent in the bullshit. And that's the thing that parents need to pull their children aside and tell them when you go to these institutions, make sure that you know your rights and that if you're going to participate in any type of protest or student upheaval, any of that, know that you run the risk of actually getting expelled or removed or suspended from those schools. Because at the end of the day, places like Howard, Morgan, and many other HBCUs, they decide, the older generations decide what really, whether or not you can be a part of their institution. And like I said, a lot of these students that got disenrolled, they gave you a clear indication of how they feel about you as a student. It's just like kind of the equivalent to the church protecting a child molester. If our institutions treat our students like they're a dollar sign, then what good is the institution then? And that's my rant. This has been another Media Talks TV. Got more videos coming soon. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like, share this video, and put your thoughts down in the comments. Put your comments down. And tell me what you think. I don't care whether you agree with me or not, but I sure as hell wouldn't go to a school that would disenroll me because I didn't have their money on time. So let that sink in for a minute. Think about that. I want to tell students and Howard, the students that were formerly enrolled in Howard, look, You got other choices. You don't need them. I remember when I got a rejection letter from Howard, I said, fuck them. There are other schools. You do not need Howard University. You can go somewhere else and be great for a fraction of the cost. I wouldn't give a fuck if it was the Mecca or the Hilltop. That Divine Nine shit and that Town of the 10th Negro bullshit went out with the civil rights movement. It's over. And I want to ask the parents to stop feeding this bullshit to your kids. Oh, I went to the Mecca. You need to go to the Mecca too. I'm like, what? At the cost of them going bankrupt? Cost of them being in debt? What's the point? $260,000 for a fucking symbol? I'm done with this. I'm tired of fucking Howard. I'm tired of these HBCUs continuing to do this bullshit. You're not fucking special, okay? None of y'all are fucking special. See how many of your alumni can get jobs in the white world, having to compete with the Ivy Leagues, having to compete with the MITs and the Harvards of the world. Y'all not fucking special. You're dead fucking last in every goddamn thing. But y'all want to be so special. You want to make these students feel like they ain't shit. I remember how you made me feel, and I never forget. So fuck all y'all.